Hey all, PyroDrake here with the OAnalysis for Episode 2, New Colossus. We finish off Prairie's childhood and get a better idea of how she disappeared 7 years before. We also get the first view of any kind of home life some of the boys have. Let's get into it. Episode 2 starts right where Episode 1 left off. Due to the bus accident, Nina's father had her smuggled to America, where she was entered into a luxurious school for the blind. Starting here, we see a recurring theme of five-sided objects and places. I can't think of anyone better to call that out than Faith from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Every time we see something that fits, I'll count up with a
5x5.
In this first scene, we have the setup of the snake tanks in that five-sided orientation.
5x5.
Additionally, we have a second instance of her communicating with animals.
Don't be afraid. I know you are a good snake.
Every Sunday night, Nina would sneak down to the phone and speak with her father. I'm surprised nobody wakes up by her playing the violin.
До тех пор, которые мы будем вместе. Понимаешь?
Да.
Сделай мне еще одолжение. Сыграй еще.
Anyways, one day, Nina gets called to the office.
Your aunt. She's here because something has happened to your father.
Your papa is gone.
With her father gone, she's sent to live with her paternal aunt, Zoya, in poverty. Zoya ran a whorehouse and also participated in illegal adoptions.
I rarely spoke to anyone, except for the babies, who would come and go.
Nancy and Abel, an older couple that probably wouldn't get adoption approval from a legal source, show up one day set to adopt a baby boy. While coming from the bathroom, Nancy hears Nina and starts to talk to her.
You can talk to me. I'm Nancy.
I'm Nina.
If you listen closely, we can actually get the reason Nancy is adopting at this stage in her life.
Do you know why I'm here? I'm a cancer survivor.
Nancy convinces Nina's aunt to take her instead of the baby boy, and Nina's aunt, knowing that she'd be better provided for, agrees.
If you want her, can't stop you. You can provide for her better than I could.
It's here where Nancy gives Nina her new name.
Eyes are blue as the prairie sky. Prairie. That's what I'll call you.
They bring Prairie to her new home, and just as she did when she returned, she digs her feet into the carpet. After some nights, we see that Nina's been sleepwalking, and we see Abel recording her. The same recording OA heard when she first turned the camera on in the previous episode.
She needs a doctor, Nancy.
Bringing the tape to a psychiatrist, it's recommended Prairie take antipsychotic pills. I've always seen this doctor as not being on the up and up, as he doesn't mind seeing a patient from an illegal adoption without reporting them. He also uses Prairie's description of her time in Russia as part of a delusion. While experiencing symptoms of PTSD from the bus accident, Nancy feeds the pills the doctor gave her to Prairie. OA said the pills made her feel numb, but didn't stop the dreams. In one, we see her climbing the face of the Statue of Liberty while her father calls for her in the distance. Then she falls on the inside platform. When she stands up, she sees her father with 21 wax candles. When she goes for him, he fades backwards. OA felt the dreams were her father's way of telling her he was alive and where and when to find him. On her 21st birthday, she executed a plan to get to New York. After waiting all day on Ellis Island, her father never showed. Once in the subway, she came up with one more plan.
If I couldn't see my father, maybe he could hear me. I would play my violin in the underground until he stepped off a train, heard my song, and came running.
OA tells the boys that someone else found her. With the rising sun, the group disperses. Unfortunately, Nancy glances out of the window at the exact time OA is returning home. OA tells them she just needed to walk, and Nancy threatens to send her back to the psychiatric ward. She agrees to meet with an FBI agent that keeps calling them, and Abel agrees to give her an hour walk.
Maybe she needs some wide open space, Nance.
This is actually the first time I see Abel overrule Nancy, and I love it. We cut to French's house, getting an idea of the type of home life he has.
You good? Everything good?
My butthole stinks, but yeah.
The doctor checked it out for you.
We also see why he was at the house the previous day. To buy some pills he crushes up and snorts. At school, French gets a Snapchat of a couple of photos for a Russian bus accident dated in 1995. French and his principal get a phone call offering him a scholarship for the organization called the Knightsman Foundation. That seems only slightly racist.
Your essay about bees. Oh, my mistake. You wrote about learning CPR. Your abuela will be over the moon.
What matters is You got it.
French then learns of the character clause, or...
Just don't do anything weird. Don't get in trouble with the cops or anything.
At lunch, Steve and Jesse are trying to look up anything from OA's story, but the only thing so far is the bus. As Buck joins them, we see Betty talking to the principal about getting Steve out of Asheville, and French passes them off.
He's a fucking dick if he doesn't come back.
Back at home, French tells his mom of the scholarship.
I can go to any school in Michigan for free.
So you're done with Harvard?
We get the impression that French's mom is manipulative and usually out for her own agenda.
Pick up milk. I can't have my coffee in the morning without it.
On the milk run, French runs into Buck.
Oh, no, I'm not going.
Due to the character clause, French doesn't want to be caught at a house with drug deals. We learn from Buck that his parents want him to be like French.
First they wanted me to be Christine Yee, but...
After a bit of thought, French calls to Buck to give him a ride to the house. Upon arrival, Buck tells Steve he can't deal out of there if they're going to continue.
That means your supply's cut too, Buck. Including the testosterone.
Buck agrees, and OA continues her story.
The biggest mistake I made was believing that if I cast a beautiful net, I'd catch only beautiful things.
While playing her violin in the subway, a doctor introduces himself to her.
Hap is my name. Dr. Hunter Aloysius Percy, so Hap.
And asks her if she's died and come back to life, a near-death experience, or...
Did you have an NDE?
Not having met anyone else that's had an NDE, she agrees to have lunch with him. He's never had an NDE himself, but has obsessed about them ever since he had an experience in the ER.
I heard a whoosh of something leaving the body and the whoosh of it coming back. Can I show you something?
He shows the device he invented that can hear a heartbeat at 500 feet. After scanning the room, she listens to her own heartbeat, and then his heartbeat, which is notably faster and not dissimilar to a child she listened to earlier. Before Hap tells Prairie that he has to fly home, you can see the guilt of what he's about to do wash across his face, something I didn't notice on my first watching. She then offers herself to be studied as part of his work. A plane ride later, she arrives at his house. When she asks to call her parents, he presses a few digits on the phone and then hands it to her to make the call.
It just keeps ringing. They're probably on the other line.
He shows her to his lab downstairs to sleep, and after 2 flights of stairs,
Smells like rock.
she has to step over a natural stream, and he leads her to a bed. After saying goodnight, she hears a locked door and hiss. I love how this next bit is shot and executed, as both us, the audience, and Prairie are unaware of the glass until she actually walks into it. When Prairie doesn't find a door handle, she runs around the cage and trips over the stream.
Okay. Let me walk you through this. Why am I locked in a cage? It may be a while before he comes for you, and as you think about every step that led you here, you'll eventually realize it's no one's fault but your own. What's your name?
Prairie.
My name is
Homer.
Away runs home and silently sobs in her bed. This section I am going to keep completely spoiler-free. If you wish to skip this and go straight to the possible spoiler section, jump to the timecode you see on your screen. There's one thing I want to bring up, and that's the use, or more specifically, lack of use, of people's names throughout the show. My hearing isn't the greatest, so I'm accustomed to watching videos with subtitles. Throughout this series, I've noticed the subtitles print the character's name well before the character's name is audibly introduced. In this episode with the subtitles on, it tells us that Nina's aunt's name is Zoya, even though I don't think they tell us her name until an episode in part 2. If I introduce a character by name before their name is actually spoken, this is why, and also why I don't consider it to be a spoiler. Moving on, we still have to ask, is she lying? The boys say they can't find anything beyond the one accident. Does she make up the story about a cave because her father ran a mining company? OA tells the boys about the psychiatrist claiming her story as a tale of grandeur. This tells us either her background story from Russia is true, she has had a psychosis, and even from a very young age she believes these tales of grandeur are true, or 3, she's simply lying about the whole damn thing. At this point, other than the NDE she experienced in episode 1, there's no direct indication of something outside the norm, so based on what we have so far, I'm still inclined to believe her. Finally, young Prairie shows several signs of PTSD, including re-experiencing the trauma of drowning when underwater and her vivid dreams. Had the doctor accepted Prairie's story as true and not as a tale of grandeur, he may have been able to provide her a proper diagnosis and could have provided the correct treatment accordingly. The diagnosis and treatment of PTSD is quite different than that of someone with a psychotic disorder and/or schizophrenia. Treating Prairie as having PTSD may have helped her endure the dreams better, or even allowed her to not be a zombie for 13 years. At this point and going forward, I'm going to talk about things that may be spoilers for people who have not seen the rest of the show. Either close the video now if you want absolutely nothing spoiled, or if you're okay with 1 or 2 quick spoilers, feel free to watch. First, I want to talk about the dream. Other than the dream itself, there's no other signs that her father is actually alive in this dimension. That being the case, I can see the dream meaning several different things. First, she can see in the dream. Perhaps in any dimension where Nina doesn't go blind, she and her father had a special event on her 21st birthday on Ellis Island. Second, perhaps meeting Hap is the meaning of the dream. In other words, she normally would never be able to face her true self unless she went through Hap's horrible ordeals. Finally, it's possible the event she's dreaming about hasn't happened yet. In the previous dream, it was quite literal. She literally saw and felt everything exactly as it happened to her. This dream appears to be more metaphorical than literal. I like to think that maybe it's not a metaphor. If that's the case, it's possible something major may happen that knocks the Statue of Liberty on her back, hence Prairie climbing over her face. Finally, the 21 candles can mean a number of things. Maybe an event that's going to happen 21 years after she got her sight back, or maybe 21 years after her father died. After all, it's him that's holding the candles and then fades away. I have more to say about this, but I'm going to hold off until episode 8, as there's a couple of scenes I'd like to use there for emphasis. On my first watch, I had assumed Hap's faster heartbeat was a result of his coffee addiction.
By the end of medical school, I couldn't get out of bed without a double shot.
It wasn't until seeing him use it on Prairie in episode 4 that I realized it could have been a sign of nervousness or adrenaline coming from the thought of wanting to abduct her. Either way, I love the facial expression Jason Isaacs gives as Hap is wrestling with the decision and ethics of abducting a blind girl. After all, he does admit later on about the guilt he sometimes feels. Finally, just another quick note, I do like to think that Steve had a change of heart about providing Buck with testosterone once they became closer. If you got this far, thanks for watching. Feel free to like, subscribe, and hit the bell button if you want to see the next episode when it posts. Thanks a lot, and have a great day. Peace.